Hey guys, it's Graham. This is my review of Malleus. It is the second of the Eisenhorn books in the larger Warhammer 40k series of novels. Warhammer 40k is a tabletop role playing game. It's been around since, I don't know, the 80s. I first heard about it in 2004. And I got into the novels because I heard that Henry Cavill is working on that Amazon streaming show. And we just got some news last week that the thing is getting underway. It's entering pre-production and whatever. This is a vast, expansive literary and role-playing game universe. If you were trying to describe it to somebody who didn't know anything about it would be hard to sum it up. It would be like saying, yeah, here's a story about Dungeons and Dragons. It's like, well, Dungeons and Dragons is a huge open world almost. There are rules for it, and people are kind of arguing about what those rules are, which is a whole other thing. But you get the general idea. It's a fantasy world. There are different races. You go on quests, and it's good versus evil. It's that kind of thing. Well, with Warhammer 40k, it's set tens of thousands of years in the future. There is a group called the Imperium of Mankind, started on Earth. There's the God Emperor who rules the Imperium, and he's got loyalists and stuff. And they go around the universe eradicating evil chaos, demons, and aliens and stuff. And there's space marines, and there's inquisitors. There's all kinds of stuff. It's so broad and dense with the lore that trying to figure out what kind of story to tell, like, this is something Cavill touched on, like, he and his creative team finally figured out what their entry point is going to be for the story they want to tell in order to introduce streaming audiences to Warhammer. I bring this up because when I was looking for a book to start reading to get into this, people recommended a couple of like sub-series within the Warhammer books. They recommended starting with the Horus Heresy, and I tried that out. That one I fell on my face hard. But then the one recommendation I kept seeing was the Eisenhorn series. Now, I did a review on this channel probably earlier this year about the first book called Xenos. That was like the first full case that Eisenhorn handled. And this one, book two, Malleus, is a follow-up to that. And having read Xenos and having finally gotten a grasp on the world, it made Malleus a much more enjoyable read. And I see now why people said that this one was a really great entry point to the series and to the world of Warhammer 40,000. The reason that I really struggled with the Horus Heresy is that it is a massive, significant event in the history of Warhammer 40k. And it changes a whole lot of things. And if you're trying to understand the world, then understanding a massive event that changed the world, like, it is just going to make it much more complicated. Well, changed what? Changed what about it? What am I trying to understand? That's got a lot to do with why I wasn't able to grasp or appreciate what the Horus Heresy was. Whereas in Eisenhorn, like, the world is static and you're experiencing it. You're experiencing the setting through the eyes of one man who isn't trying to change the world, he's just interacting with it. He's an inquisitor, and it's his job to go around the Imperium and find people who are breaking the laws or the commandments, basically the religion of the Imperium, by doing things that the Emperor has forbidden and bringing them to justice. I've heard descriptions of it like, oh, he's kind of like James Bond. It's like, yeah, there's a little bit of that to it. Sometimes he's got to go undercover. Sometimes he's got to be deceptive. It's a little bit police procedural, detective work. Like, there's that side of it to the cases that he handles. In Xenos, he was trying to get to the bottom of a case involving people dealing with necromancy magic, and they were hunting for this book called the Necrotuke that would allow them to harness the powers of chaos, which is forbidden by the Emperor. If you think of the Imperium as God and chaos as the devil, you'll understand the dichotomy there. And there were even some people like on his own side that Eisenhorn had to go to war with, because the corrupting power of this Necrotuke and of the chaos powers is very intense. And that's a recurring theme now through these two books, is that chaos offers power, and it's very tempting to mortal minds to want to reach out and ally yourself with that power, that there's satisfaction in it. But those who are loyal to the Imperium understand that that power is a lie, it is a corruption, it is wrong, and you've got to really have a personal spiritual commitment to the Imperium and to the God Emperor to withstand the temptation that chaos offers. So now that I've spent a couple of minutes blabbing about that, what is the plot of this individual book? Well, it takes place about 100 years after Xenos. People can live for centuries in this. Like, there are procedures that they can go through to keep them young and stuff. And so Eisenhorn has been at this for a while, and the reason why they're picking this up 100 years later is that it connects back to the case that he was handling in Xenos. It's not about finding another Necrotuke, it's not about the same cult, but there are powers attached to the forces that he went to war with that he's got to deal with again in this one. But there's another layer of complexity added to it, because there are rumors going around that Eisenhorn himself is in league with these chaos demons. That there was a demon who was trying to kill an Inquisitor and then specifically stopped because he thought the Inquisitor was Eisenhorn. And so Eisenhorn's got to do the Mission Impossible thing where he goes rogue to do the right thing and get to the bottom of this new conspiracy that's going on. There are chaos forces kind of running rampant. He goes to this planet called Thracia where they're attending a triumph parade, like a ticker tape parade for an Inquisitor who had a massive success somewhere. He stopped a bad guy. He arrested like 30 psychers, those evil mental wizards, basically. And while they're there, the military parade gets compromised and a couple of fighter jets crash and a bunch of people die and the psychers get loose and he's got to go to war with the psychers. And man, now that I'm familiar with the world, like the linear method of the storytelling here, like I'm able to wrap my head around it a lot more. And this story, I feel like it flowed a lot more smoothly than the Xenos story did. And I'm saying that because I tried listening to Xenos on audio and I was enjoying what I was able to grasp, but I was still so behind the curve on the lore and on the setting that I had to stop and decide to just read the book in print. I took a gamble on listening to Malleus, and it totally worked. Now that I understand the fundamentals of what's going on in this setting, it's a lot easier to go with the flow of the narration. And the writing is really good. The voice that Dan Abnett has when he describes things and tells the story from Eisenhorn's perspective, the prose and everything, it's very, very beautiful. I like the ideas that are in here as he kind of peels back layers here and there and shows you different elements of the life of an Inquisitor and all of that. It's all a very satisfying read. It scratches a lot of itches for me. I thought that especially, and this kind of came to the surface in the final third of the book, I thought that especially it was valuable to examine the idea that, and this is something that happens in the real world, it happens in our world, people who get into law enforcement and have to fight corruption and fight wickedness and stuff, like they end up becoming, we'll say, maybe desensitized to it. They spend a lot of time up close with lawless behavior and even wicked behavior, and you've got to check in with yourself and check in with your comrades, we'll say, to make sure that you're not being twisted by this thing that you're constantly confronting. And since this is a story where there's, we'll say, magic and high technology and spirituality that often is intertwined and the lines blur between them, that becomes even more prevalent. They've got to be extra careful about it, since this is a military duty and a law enforcement duty, but also a religious duty. Eisenhorn has to be very aware of what his limitations are and whether he's being tempted to do things the wrong way so that he can do what he thinks is right, whether he's giving himself over to chaos, whether he's being tempted by that power, and that power is very readily working on him to try to flip him. I compared the Necrotuke, that evil necromancer book from Xenos, to the One Ring from Lord of the Rings, and it's an object that manifested itself that same way. Like, just being in the presence of it it was working its psychic magic on Eisenhorn and tempting him to, like, hey, pick it up and use it. And he ended up having to execute comrades of his who were doing that very thing. Like, no, we can do this, we can use it. And he had the courage to take the Necrotuke and burn it. Like, this is a book that, by the rules of the Imperium, should not exist. And so he did that. Like I said, there's not so much of a MacGuffin in this one, but it's an extension of the same challenge. It's, he's been at this for 100 years now. Is he going to get complacent, or is he going to stay sharp? And how is he going to check himself against this? I really, really like this setting. I like this character. And man, I really hope that other books that I read in the Warhammer 40k continuity provide the same kind of enjoyable experience, even if they don't provide it in the same way. I have 3 print books in this series that are big omnibus collections of different character stories written by different authors. There's the Caiaphas Cain books and the Gaunt's Ghosts books, and then the Eisenhorn books. And one of them is more of a military thriller. This one, like I said, it's more of a kind of a spy, Mission Impossible type thriller. And then the Caiaphas Cain books are supposed to be like military comedy humor type books. And if you can get like solid treatments with 3 different tones to them, just out of those 3 books, I mean, geez, there's like 500 Warhammer novels, then that's an indication of a very robust and well thought out setting. And it seems like the publisher, like Black Library, finds really good writers to handle this stuff and write more of it and put it out there into the world. So I'm feeling validated in my choice to get into Warhammer and to get into it specifically through these books. I'm excited to read the next one. It's called Hereticus. And then there's a 4th book called Magos, which is like twice as long as any of the other ones. So I'm not going to rush through them or blitz them. I like the idea of tackling them each of a few months apart. Let it sit, let it marinate, let it rest before I jump right into it. I don't want to blitz it. These are still dense books, but I found myself much more able to follow along everything that was going on now that I've got a handle on the basics. And as long as they continue to be highly entertaining and enjoyable, I will continue to read them. So that is my review of Malleus. Thank you for listening. Check the description. You can find a link to my Amazon page. I'm a novelist myself. My most recent release, Howling Wilderness, is about an epic race down the Appalachian Trail. 26 contenders competing for a pot of $10,000 and a seat on the government council. Some of them are riding monsters, some of them are riding machines, and there are high stakes at high speed. I think you're really going to like it. Plus, it's fully illustrated, so check that out. Drive safe. See you out there.